Hey folks, so I just wanted to post this little process video because I know that I'm always hungry to see how other people work. I'm going to be talking during the relevant parts of it, and I may just let the nice music play during the pieces where I'm just working for a longer period of time. So let's get started. The first thing I do is make a layer over top of my sketch and just fill in the whole silhouette of the figure, or in this case figures. So that just means drawing a really clean line around the outside edges that I'm going to fill in and use as my base layer to make a clipping mask on top of. And essentially what that means is that once I fill in this whole big red shape that you see me working on right now, all of my layers are going to be on top of that as a clipping mask, meaning that I will not be able to draw outside of this silhouette that you see me working on right now. So that little color layer that you saw up here for a second is the way that I like to select color, which is just really roughly on top of my sketch. I like to try a bunch of different palettes, not filling anything in cleanly, but just blobbing in, the face, the hair, the shirts, until I find a color palette that I like. And then I can go in and use those colors with my very clean, precise shapes, which is what I'm doing now. And it saves me from having to do a lot of experimentation when I'm working with cleaner, more finalized shapes. All of my colors are already picked out. So right now I'm just filling in all of the shapes, each on their own layer. So his pants, her pants, shirt, hair, each of those will be on a separate layer. And that helps me, if I do need to adjust anything, adjust only that section. So yeah, just going in, filling everything out, and then I'm about to make a layer on top of this, which I call my lines layer. And what that does is let me start adding details on top of these flat shapes. So what you're going to see is that I pick areas to add lines where there is differentiation between internal shapes. So basically what that means is if you see her head and her neck just look like a big pink blob right now. And what I'm going to do on the lines layer is add a line for her chin. And I'm going to do that throughout the piece. That's where I pick how to draw lines. I remember that being something that I really struggled with at first when I saw people's really clean, flat, graphic illustrations. And I was like, how do they know where to put the lines? There are no outlines on the edge of the piece. And yeah, the sort of rule is you want to add line work wherever you want to break up two areas that are in the same color shape, if that makes sense. So going in here, adding little details, editing the outer silhouette that I initially did in that big red pink shape. Now with the lines layer, since that's not a clipping layer that's above that shape, that's just its own layer, I can add stuff to the edge of that silhouette. It's like some little hairs sticking up, or add a little detail or texture that I hadn't initially had. I'm just laughing at how long I spent on this poor baby's mouth. I don't know about you guys, but it is really hard for me to draw characters with open mouths that don't look horrifying. So I did quite a few attempts on this one. I start adding some flat shadows, the cast shadow underneath their chins, and I just do that in the same color as I picked for the lines. The way I pick the colors for the lines is I just take the base shape that I'm drawing on. So for his pants, I color picked the color of his pants, and then I went slightly darker and slightly more saturated to get that really rich, bright brown that I use for the line, differentiating his two pant legs. the reason I do that is I used to pick just a darker version of the color, and I found that that just looked a little bit muddy. I guess it's a little bit like how they tell you don't ever mix black into your shadow color in traditional painting. Just more saturated shadows are just more visually interesting. And I'm going to start adding in some large areas of shadow in a second. I'm a pretty flat graphic kind of illustrator. I don't do a lot of, I guess what you'd call like soft shading or rendering. So if I want his further away pant leg to be in shadow, I'll just block the whole thing in. And what I like to do to keep my palettes a little bit more limited is just use a color I've already used somewhere else in the piece. So instead of picking a whole new shadow color for that pant leg, I dropped the color I had used for the crease of his cuff. And that just helps keep things a little more uniform. I tend not to like it when there's like a few dozen different colors in a piece as like clean and graphic as this. So I'm about to drop in a watercolor texture. I do that by painting one myself on some watercolor paper, scanning it, and then setting it on a layer on top of everything else to overlay, and then dropping the opacity, as you can see. And I just feel like that adds a little bit more organic texture. Then I also add a mask with a texture on top of that to make it look like there's little bits and pieces of the paper showing through on the final illustration. Now the video stops here because I thought I was done, but as you can see from my final illustration, I went back after a few hours and played around with it some more. I felt like the bright red shirt was making it a bit much of a primary color scheme, and I wanted to keep it a little bit more in the warm family, and also let their faces be the focal point instead of this big bright red shirt. The other main change I made was, instead of having those big flat areas of shadow, I went back with the Kyle Webster New Pastel brush, and I just softened the transition there a little bit, and I like that sort of dry brush gouache effect. So here's the finished piece. It was a lot of fun to work on, and I hope this was helpful for any of you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.